All right. Good morning. My name is Katie Domrat. I am the Adult Programs Coordinator at the VMFA. Welcome to our 3 and 30 this month. It is my privilege to welcome my colleague, Mary Holland, the Thomas C. Gordon Jr. Director of the Studio School here at the VMFA. She is going to talk a little bit about Willie Anne Wright. So thanks. Mary, you're ready to go.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. We're going to be talking about Willie Anne Wright's artwork today, and it's wonderful that Willie Anne is getting the recognition she deserves and that her artwork and her archives are now in the VMFA permanent collection. There is also a beautiful comprehensive catalog produced in conjunction with the show, and it was written by VMFA photo curator Sarah Kennel. Willie Anne Wright is a friend of mine. I met her in the mid-1980s when I had graduated from VCU. I was working at the now defunct Richmond printmaking workshop and took a pinhole photography class with Willie. It was an eye-opening experience. I made a pinhole photo from a pinhole camera that I built under Willie Anne's direction, and it was out of an oatmeal box. And you can see the paper negative that was created in the camera. And then it was developed in the dark room, and the positive photo was made from the paper negative in the dark room. So with these photos, we were using single weight photographic paper. And this is an image of an alley off of Strawberry Street near Willie Anne's home. And this is the alley we would always walk to go to Joe's Inn for lunch with Willie. So it was always a really nice thing. So this is a good sort of souvenir of those times with her. And at the time, I met Willie in the mid-1990s when I was out of graduate school and working at the Richmond printmaking workshop. She was creating a lot of pinhole photographs with a variety of pinhole cameras. And she was photographing Civil War reenactments around the country. And my husband and I took a couple of day trips with Willie Anne and her husband, Jack, to photograph. And I remember going to Colonial Beach for the first time, which is in Virginia. And they have gambling there. And it was a really interesting little town. And then we went on to Dunbarton Oaks in Georgetown, which was in full bloom for spring. And we stopped at Penn Camera in DC to buy some photo supplies. And the salesperson recognized Willie Anne's name from some exhibitions on contemporary photography. And she was very pleased to be recognized. And some of the photos that were made that day that Willie made are still on her website. Let me backtrack a bit. Talk about Willie Anne and how she got into her artistic career. Willie went to William and Mary in the 1940s and she studied psychology. And she took a couple of art classes during that time, but didn't get really serious about studying art until she was married and had 3 children. In 1958, she enrolled full-time in art classes at Virginia Commonwealth University, which at the time was RPI, Richmond Professional Institute. In 1960, she started working on her master's degree in painting and printmaking, which she received in 1964. And Willie was very serious about her painting. She was in her 40s. She was a mom to 3 kids, but she was spending a lot of time on her artwork. And she started showing her paintings in group shows. And she even had a painting show, a solo painting show at the Robinson House, which is on the museum's grounds in 1967. And she said she was inspired by many things during her career. She was a painter and she did painting and then became a photographer in the 1970s. And this is a really perfect image to kind of talk about what her interests were and what it was like to be an artist in the 1960s. And so the cultural shifts of the mid-60s, including the rise of new forms of media, changing sexual, social, and radical dynamics, and the explosion of consumer culture proved pivotal for her. She stated that she felt more connected to youth culture in the 1960s than her own generation. Her kids were growing up and, teenagers in the 1960s. And Willie Anne specifically looked to television and photography as inspiration for her painting. So you can see by the title here, One Night at Jimmy's, we saw the Supremes on color TV. And that hangs generally in the museum's collection of 1960s pop artwork. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about how Willie Anne got into pinhole photography now. There she is, looking cute with her William Morris camera, which she built in George Nann's pinhole class in 1972. And this particular camera is actually in the exhibition, Willie Anne Wright, Artist and Alchemist. And you can see she's decorated the camera on the front, if you look closely, with William Morris wallpaper. So she's even at this time making a connection to the past with her camera and the way she's made the camera. So in 1972, Willie Anne took an introduction to photography class at VCU, and it was taught by George Nann. He used to teach here at the studio school. So you can tell there's a nice connection in the artistic community in Richmond. And Willie Anne primarily took the photo class so she could learn how to use her new camera. She had a new Canon camera, and she wanted to be able to document her paintings. So she took the class, and the first assignment in the class was to build a pinhole camera. And she said that she and the other students weren't very excited about it, but it was a requirement, and so they all had to do it. And I'll just describe a pinhole camera as a very simple lensless camera. It's a light tight box that has a pinhole punched into one side, and it will let the light into the dark chamber. And when you put a light sensitive material, either photo paper or film, into the pinhole camera on the opposite side of the pinhole itself, it records a photographic image upside down and backwards, like a camera obscura. So pinhole photographs have been used since the 1850s, and Willie Anne was particularly drawn to pinhole photographs because it connected her to the past, and it had unpredictable results. Because it is lensless, it does a lot of blurring and vignetting, so you never quite know what you're going to get. And in the video interview with Willie Anne that's in the exhibition, she starts by saying, "I like to try different things. I don't want to do things someone else has already done." So she's inspired by change and by new technologies and by trying different things. And you can see how much her artwork changes during her career, but there is always a focus on women, and there's always a focus to connecting with the past. And we'll start actually now with the 3 photographs I've selected to talk about today. And they're done at different times during her career. The first one was done in the 1970s when she just started doing a lot of pinhole photography. And this one is a self-portrait, Artist with a Gourd, from 1978. And it's a silver dye bleach print, which is also called sebachrome, direct positive sebachrome. So she's experimenting with this interesting process, and I'll talk a little bit about how it's done. She began making color prints because they were very in vogue in the 1970s in photography. So she wanted to jump on the bandwagon and try some color film and photography, So this is, this piece was made in 1978, and the material was put in the camera, and the image was actually made directly in the camera. And the sebachrome produces color prints through a process of selectively bleaching out unused dyes. And these prints are prized for their vibrant, rich, and clear hues. And Willie Anne had to experiment putting different colored filters on her pinhole cameras so that the color would be correct. She said when she just started using the pinhole without any filters on it, everything came out blue. So she had to figure out what color would correct that, and she was able to get something that's very close to natural in this image. And the other thing about using a pinhole camera is that they're very long exposures. So she put herself in this place, sitting down and holding the score, because the exposure had to be in bright sunlight, and also she had to hold it for about 5 minutes. So it was quite a feat that she got this to come out so well. And she has this great quote that she says about Cibachrome when she's using it. She says, "Cibachrome led me to the heart of pinhole photography, experimentation, and revelation." And I think you'll see that repeated in the different bodies of photographic work she does throughout her career. That it's really amazing the kind of things she comes up with and how inventive she is. And so this photograph is a culmination of what she has been shooting in her garden. You can see a lot of still life setups. She has two, because of course she said still life setups don't move. So she made the self-portrait in bright sunlight using a board with the board plant growing all around her. And she also did a series of figs and many other still life compositions. And this series of photographs, these Cibachromes, were featured in a show at Candela Gallery down on Broad Street that Gordon Stettinius has. And it was a beautiful show, I remember. And Candela also produced a lovely catalog, which is entitled Willie Anne Wright, Direct Positives. All right, so we'll go to the next photo. And the next photo is from the Southland series, and it's a series of work of ruins in the South. And she took a lot of photographs around Virginia. And this particular one is from King William County, Virginia, and it's called Woman in White by an Abandoned House. And it's from 1978, so it's 20 years after the board photo, the self-portrait of Willie Anne's. And she's using a pinhole photograph, and the subject is blurred. So it's very interesting to see, and it's kind of got a warm tone to it. A lot of times you can use selenium toning when you're printing black and white photographs, and you get this nice rich warm tone to it. And when speaking about this particular series, the Southland series, Willie Anne frequently refers to William Faulkner's famous quote about the South from his 1951 novel, Requiem for a Nun. And the quote is, "The past is never dead. It's not even past," which I just think is a wonderful quote. And in this series, she focuses on what has been left behind. So here you see the abandoned house. You see traces of lives lived and ways of life that have been vanished. And in this series, Willie Anne refers to the pinhole camera as a conduit between the past and the present. So you have this contemporary woman who's dressed in an old white gown that you could think of as an antique gown, and then you see this falling down house in the back that's probably 100 years old. And she usually uses the ghostly figure of the woman in white to symbolize grief and loss. And, you know, Richmond being Richmond and kind of a small town in certain ways, I know the model here, and it's a woman named Anne Chamblin, and she's an art teacher now at Patrick Henry Elementary School. So it's wonderful to see that whole connection, and to sort of think about how many people and how many artists in the community that Willie Anne has touched and has encouraged. So in addition to traveling around Virginia for this series, she also traveled to photograph ruins in Georgia, Mississippi, and South Carolina. So check it out in the galleries. And then the last photo, or the last two photos we'll look at, are from her most recent series. And this was made in 2013. And this is a really interesting, this is an interesting series because it's very unpredictable. And again, Willie's kind of experimenting and creating something that I have not seen much of before. And this is from the Broodmania series. And this particular piece is titled A Season of Vexation. And it's surprisingly, you wouldn't know, but it's a gelatin silver print. So it's got all these beautiful colors, but it's actually black and white photo paper, and it's developed with black and white chemistry. And it's kind of interesting how this all came about. She was experimenting, I think, with old black and white photo paper, and she was putting it out in the sun and then putting stencils and plants. And this particular piece, she put a negative from this Victorian photograph on it. And she left it out in the sun for a good while, maybe 5 minutes or so. And then she took it in and developed it in the darkroom, and all these beautiful colors came up. She did not, add color to it. This is actually black and white film and black and white chemistry for development. So the beginning of this and her whole relationship with the Broodmania plant or the Broodmansia plant, Willie Anne has used flower imagery in her artwork since the beginning. When she was doing painting and doing printmaking, she would use floral imagery in a lot of her pieces. And in 2006, a friend gave her a potted Broodmansia plant, which she nicknamed Bobo. And at first, she pressed and dried the blossoms, but soon began incorporating them directly into the photographs. And in this particular photograph, you can see that they are pressed photos of leaves. And then you can see the photograph made from a negative as a contact print is inserted into the middle there. And Willie Anne's was interested in the Broodmansia's relationship with mysticism and its shamanistic history. And the plant is native to the tropical Andes regions of South America. And the plant's toxic leaves and buds can produce hallucinogenic effects when consumed. And these psychedelic experiences are believed to allow communication with the dead. And in these photographs, the Broodmansia plant serves as a means to commune with the past. And if I could go to the next image, please, Katie. And this will tip you off to why Willie Anne named her the previous piece we looked at, A Season of Vexation. You can see our sitter on the right side of the photograph, and I'm not sure if this is a group of friends or sisters or whatever, but you can see our friend from the previous photograph on the right, and she is not putting up with putting whatever they have in their hair on. She is like, she's not looking very happy. She's looking off to the side, and she's just, taking a deep breath and going with it. But anyway, it's funny, and this kind of shows you Willie Anne's good sense of humor. Willie Anne collected a lot of photographs, and she used those in her artwork, and she also used them for inspiration to make her pieces.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for your time and for joining us. Thank you, Mary, for this great presentation, and we hope to see you next month.
Thank you.
Bye.